So we've come to the end of the third DVD in our Modeling Fundamentals series. And in this DVD, we've been looking at curve modeling. It's something of a departure to a certain extent from what we've looked at in previous DVDs. And I think you can see now that using curves to actually generate models allows you certain freedoms and advantages over the, the sort of modular basis of modeling that you have with primitives and also the highly segmented mindset that you have to follow when you're working with polygonal models. With polygonal models, you're always working with facets, but with splines and curves, you're really working with curves and they then are realized via polygons when the curves are actually tessellated. So in this DVD, we looked at the history of splines and how they were developed to help people in traditional car building and shipbuilding and boat building industries, and how those mathematical curves were then adopted in the burgeoning early computer software industries and were used to develop software which we now know as CAD software, computer aided design. And these sets of mathematics were very important in the early days of CAD development because obviously they allowed you to represent curves and also linear lines in a three-dimensional manner and in a flexible manner within computer-aided design software. Later, it went on to be developed and used in more special effects-based software such as Maya, Softimage, 3ds Max, Houdini, and so on. So we then looked at how our curve-based models are tessellated into polygonal meshes. And we also looked at a number of practical tips that you should bear in mind whenever you're doing any kind of spline model. These are kind of universal tips and tricks to carry out when you're doing any kind of spline based modeling. And then with those points in mind, we then had an overview of the concept of curve based modeling. And we looked at some of the basic fundamentals of producing models by combining curves together. And then we moved on. We actually started looking at the particular curve-based modeling tools we have in 3ds Max. And on this DVD, we haven't looked at every single curve-based modeling tool because that would take several DVDs. But we have looked at some of the most fundamental modeling tools that we can use to produce models. And those are the extrude modifier. We looked at the lathe modifier. And we also looked at the loft compound object. And because of the complexity of that particular tool, we looked at that particular system in 3 separate chapters. And then we took on those tools and we resumed our modeling project, which is this go-kart that we've been building ever since DVD 1 in the series. And we used these spline-based tools. We used extrude, we used lofting, and we used lathing to build objects that we could then use to actually enhance our go-kart model. And by the end of this DVD, where we get to the point now where we have a pretty complete model of the go-kart. And what we'll do is in the next DVD in the series, we'll actually use the skills that we learned in that DVD, which deals with sub-D modeling, to add the final elements and also to enhance some of the other elements. And then to finish off this DVD, we went on a slight detour where I showed you how splines are pretty much inherent in all areas of 3ds Max in terms of animation. They're used to control your animation with the Bezier handles that you have in the animation editor inside 3ds Max. You can make objects move along paths, and those paths can be closed so you get a looping animation, or the object will just move from one end to the other. I also showed how you can actually animate the splines themselves to change shape over time, and how those modifying animated curves then also be combined together using tools such as Loft or Lathe to produce animated surfaces. Splines are very, very flexible in that they can be used for modeling and also for animation. And as I said, because they can represent curves, they're used to represent the motion of objects over time. So they're used quite extensively in the animation system in 3ds Max, and indeed in many packages. That basically brings us to the end of this DVD. And as I alluded to a little bit earlier, what we'll be looking at in the next DVD is sub-D modeling. And this is where you use basically a polygonal mesh as the basis of a curved surface. And it kind of combines some of the concepts that you would have in a NURB surface with some of the concepts that you have in a polygonal surface. The advantage being is that when you're working with sub-Ds, you never really find yourself in a position where you get stuck in the way that you build your surfaces. today it's used as the dominant method for modeling organic surfaces, characters, animals, mechanical surfaces, and to some extent NURBS is still used on very mechanical surfaces, but if you're talking about any kind of creature, then sub-D surfaces are basically the de facto standard that you'll find in pretty much all industries, in games, in film, TV, special effects, and so on. Sub-D modeling is very important. And then in the second half of that DVD, we'll be looking, it'll be kind of a recap basically to look back at some of the techniques that we've used throughout all of the DVDs and how they can be used together, how we can combine the different techniques. And what I want to basically finish off with is, finish off with the concept that these tools are not to be used in isolation. They are intended to be used as part of a suite and as part of a smooth workflow where you can use one technique with another to produce the end result, the end model that it is that you're looking for. So that's it for now. I'll see you in the next DVD. Bye for now.